Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. We had a deluge of rain last night. Some people never got home, apparently. The drainage simply doesn't work here at these sorts of times, and really some dramatic footage came out. Macro thoughts: Federal Reserve's first interest rate increase since 2006 will signal a regime shift that will stir financial markets when it occurs, says the New York Fed President William C. Dudley. And I think he's not wrong. I agree with this comment by Jane Foley, Rabobank strategist. My feeling is that this is all broadly a shakeout of position. The market got itself very long dollars, very short euro, and very long bonds. There are some major positions being readjusted, and it may take some weeks or even months before we get back on track. The Wall Street Journal tweeted, stability can breed instability, and why bond markets keep crashing. Put up this diagram, which is of the Bund, which fell pretty dramatically over the last few sessions. Doris Lessing: art is the mirror of our betrayed ideals. Political reflections: US military is considering using aircraft and Navy ships to directly contest Chinese territorial claims to a chain of rapidly expanding artificial islands, US officials have said. And my conclusions are: opening a front in Ukraine has blunted the pivot to Asia. Eduardo Kaplan tweeted a photograph of these islands in the sea. We also learned that Hyun Yum Chol, the chief of North Korea's People's Armed Forces, was executed by firing squad using an anti-aircraft gun at a military school in Pyongyang around April 30th. It's pretty dramatic stuff that goes on in there. Anti-War has a very interesting article, but there's one sentence in this article that caught my attention. An air assault without ground troops has zero chance of success, and I think that's absolutely true. Long-time Middle East correspondent Robert Fisk says the Saudis live in fear of the Iranians, the Shia, the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, US betrayal, Israeli plots, even themselves. For where else will the revolution start in Sunni Muslim Saudi Arabia but among its own royal family? And saying that fear is driving the war in Yemen, which I for one think there is simply no strategy, or I don't understand what the end game is unless it's just to bomb the place to smithereens. I'll put up a photograph of King Salman welcoming President Barack Obama on January the 28th in Riyadh. Of course, he will not be going to the Camp David summit that President Obama is convening. A Brazilian think tank has released a macabre interactive map which exposes the nations where people are most likely to be murdered. Something to think about. Bill Clinton says if Hillary Clinton wins, we'll move back to the White House. He'll move back to the White House if asked. First of all, Hillary has to win the nomination. If she wins the nomination, then she has to win the election, Clinton said of his wife, the front-runner in the race for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination. If she wins the election, the chances are 100% I'll move back if I'm asked, he said to audience laughter. Put up a photograph of a young Bill and Hillary Clinton. International markets, and that's going back to the point from the Wall Street Journal, plunge, shows how stability can breed instability. Central banks are getting a painful lesson in how their efforts to stabilize markets and boost their economies can occasionally do the opposite. Latest example is the brutal sell-off in the German bond market. Yields on the 10-year German government bond, or Bund, hit 0.67% on Tuesday, up more than half a percentage point in just 3 weeks. The main driving factor driving up yields is more technical than fundamental, and is in a strange way the result of central banks' success in pushing yields down. Those efforts have led investors and traders to take on bigger positions, according to strategists at JP Morgan. But when prices start to move against them, they respond by shrinking their positions, which can accelerate the movement of prices. This is not the first time it's happened. Last October, it was Treasuries whose yields shot from 1.865% to 2.15% in a single day, eventually climbed to 2.4%. In the spring of 2013, something similar happened to Japanese government bonds. What all three had in common, according to JP Morgan, is that they were all driven by investors and traders using a risk management technique called value at risk, VAR, don't I remember, that causes them to take on larger positions when volatility is low because the steep price swings that inflict large losses are less likely. This volatility-induced position cutting becomes self-reinforcing until yields reach a level that induces the participation of VAR-insensitive investors. That's an interesting point, such as pension funds, insurance companies, or households. They refer to these episodes as VAR shocks. Decades ago, the late economist Hyman Minsky identified a similar phenomenon in the broader economy. A long period of steady growth with low inflation can persuade firms, workers and investors that recessions and crises are a thing of the past and take on more risk as a result. For example, by buying overvalued assets with debt. Stability is destabilizing, Mr. Minsky said. He didn't survive to see that prediction come true with a vengeance in 2008. Euro got as high as 112.51 earlier. It's now at 112.24, well short of a 2-month peak of 113.92, which is actually the T-junction for the euro. Dollar index, I suspect, is lower. Japanese yen, 119.80 area. The pound, 157, the figure. Aussie above 0.80. South Korean won 10.99.05. Real was just above 3 when I looked at it, and the South African rand 12.04.52. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. And people are in two minds. Was that first quarter going to repeat in some shape or form in the second quarter? If not, then it's time to buy the dollar. If it will, the economy has moved lower, the run rate, then it's time to continue selling it. Gold, 1193.51. I'll put up a 6-month chart. Crude oil, my word, has had a strong 48-hour period. US light crude at $61.41, up 1%. What was interesting was this tweet from Greek Fire 23. Oil prices head higher as crude traders can't find buyers for 80 million barrels of Nigerian and Angolan crude. Sub-Saharan Africa, police fired towards protesters during clashes in Bujumbura. At least 2 police officers fired guns towards lines of demonstrators during clashes in Buterere district, one Reuters witness said. Another saw protesters grab a policewoman and beat her up, saying she fired at them before letting her go. A protester told Reuters a woman was shot dead in Buterere, heavy gunfire. I wrote about this on the 4th of May, and I spoke about Virilio, who says the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form, not in the place of production, as it has developed in relation to, not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine, and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. And I was saying, as we look around the world today, we can see a battle for the street, from the streets of Bujumbura to the streets of Baltimore. In November last year, I wrote about Ouagadougou's signal to Sub-Saharan Africa, and concluded that we need to ask ourselves, how many people can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100, 1,000, 10,000? And I said, this is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. Therefore, the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. They haven't yet in Burundi. South African oil share up 9.87% year to date. South African nations such as Zimbabwe are faced with significant food supply shortages from July this year because of erratic rains, the United Nations World Food Programme has said. Of great concern is Zimbabwe, which is facing a looming food deficit due to imminent widespread crop failure, the WFP said in an emailed statement. An estimated 23% of cultivated land was considered lost. Worst drought since 1992 in South Africa has damaged plants, with the nation predicting a 32% drop in the 2015 harvest to the smallest in 8 years. Price of white corn in South Africa has surged 29% so far this year, while that of the yellow variety gained 12% in the same period. Dollar rand is just above 12. I'll put up a 6-month chart. Egyptian pound is at 762.89. The Egyptian stock market is down 1.61% year to date. Nigerian oil share is up 1.41% year to date, but that disguises what was an enormous rebound on the news that Buhari had become president. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 1.59% year to date. The IMF expects Mozambique's economy to grow 7% in 2015. A year it said could see decisions to develop gas fields in the country and prompt one of the largest investments ever seen in Africa. The gas ventures in northern Mozambique could require investment of as much as $100 billion, the Washington-based lender said in a report published Tuesday. Mozambique has the potential to be the world's third largest producer of natural gas after Qatar and Australia, but needs to secure between $20 and $25 billion in foreign investment. On the 3rd of June 2014, I wrote a piece about Mozambique. I said it can be the next Qatar. I don't think I was wrong. I'll put a photograph of the evening I took just shy of a year ago when I was in Maputo. I wrote a piece on the 4th of June 2012 called Maputo Boomtown, which was predicting exactly what's happening now. And I'll put up another photograph of the sunset taken from the sea as we were pottering around the harbour in Maputo. I like this photograph of the Dinka in South Sudan. A journalist is facing jail for exposing Angolan looting. Marques de Moraes has sought to expose alleged wrongdoing in a country where media freedom is limited. You don't have corruption now. What you have now is looting, he says. People just steal galore, and you can see by the lifestyles of the Angolan elite. Between court appearances, he published a piece on his website, Macam Angola, that raised questions about the allocation of $100 million from the Sovereign Wealth Fund into a vehicle called Kijinga, with the funds held at Banco Kwanza, an investment bank in which the president's son was previously a shareholder. Jose Filomeno dos Santos said Kijinga was set up to help incubate Angolan businesses. Banco Kwanza strongly rebutted the allegations that the bank is used as an inappropriate channel by politically exposed persons. Coming to Kenya, we had a torrid session yesterday in the stock market, heavy selling across KCB and Safaricom, and the shilling printed above 97, but I think it's steadied a little bit now. Kenya's imports, this is going out to oil products, which include volumes for landlocked Uganda, South Sudan, Rwanda and Burundi, as well as parts of Tanzania, could rise more if plans are successful to solve infrastructure problems such as the limited capacity of a government-owned pipeline. Demand for petroleum products in Kenya and the region, especially for gas oil and gasoline, has been on the rise, although infrastructure challenges, particularly the lack of capacity in its product receiving terminals, has curtailed supplies. May figures bring Kenya's oil product imports so far in 2015 to 2.66 million tonnes, more than half the record annual shipments of 4.6 million tonnes seen in 2014. If those levels are maintained over the rest of 2015, the country's imports will have grown over sevenfold since 2000. Kenya shilling, when I checked, was at 96.394, but looking very soft. Nairobi all share, it's up 4.033% year to date, but has closed at a 3-month low. NSE 20 just above 5,000, that's down 1.956% year to date. And if you care to check any or every share price, there is a link on Rich Wrap-Ups right at the bottom. You can check into the share price data. If you want to follow the stock market, just register on rich.co.ke, get a password, and go to Rich Live during trading hours. Once again, I appreciate the fact that you stopped by. I am grateful for that.